What's going on, guys? Welcome to part 4 of the Dead Space suit remake. Let's not waste any time. Let's jump right into this. This is a good one for you guys. So let's start off by going back to the old suit here. Back then, the version 1 of the suit was made entirely out of old cardboard pieces. Thin, thick, you name it, I had a whole bunch of it. At the time, it was the only resource I had available to me to be able to build armor costumes with. But I knew as soon as I found the suit, I had to go back and remake this entire thing. And the rig was the hardest part for me. It literally took me about a month to just sit there, pout, and think, and really lay out how am I going to redesign this rig piece since it was so complex to make in the first place. So to start, I went to the only man who I knew how to work this stuff, Ray. He did me a huge solid for helping me out print a couple pieces in 3D print. So as far as the Stasis module here, since we made it at 3D print, there were a few moving parts. So we had the idea where we can put a little bit of soldering wire in the moving components and then just solder the ends so that the piece can stay where it needs to be. There are a couple of failed attempts, but we were able to get it down pretty easily and then ball out the ends so that the piece can pivot around. Now, as far as the bottom part of the rig, we were able to sand the entire piece, but we had to clip out that inner ring in order for the hose component to fit inside of it. Once everything was chopped up and placed together the way we wanted, it was sanding time for all of these pieces to get them ready for paint. Now let's jump back to the craft table. While I was painting those 3D printed pieces, I went ahead and designed this skeletal piece for the rig. Sadly, I had to tear apart the old piece to be able to get a template out of it, but the rib pieces I've designed to help secure the top that's going to go on this. Not only that, but it also gives it a little bit of flexibility to be able to get that arc shape as you put the top on. Then I had some triangular or square pieces left over, and I stuck it in between each rib. So then that way, if the rib piece or if the whole rig is bending, it has something to stop and it has something to brace against. Last thing I need is this whole thing crumbling in on itself because it either got too hot or if I bunk into something, there's no skeletal system to be able to support it. I cut out a few more squares to help attach the back, middle, and top piece of the cap for this rig. And I was able to design the main lid out of the original design that I had. Sad to say I had to tear it apart more, but the templates definitely came in handy. Still using the old design, I was able to cut out some fresh filters to be able to put on top of the new Stasis module. This will help kind of dim out the LEDs a little bit so it's not just seeing a black strip of LEDs inside a clear lens in the Stasis module. Once I had the LED strips secured, I was able to create little tiny squares that are going to help divide the light inside the Stasis module. I had a little bit of foam left, just a tiny strip of it, and then I was able to cut out some more and cap off the edges of the new filters I put on. So you can see as soon as you turn the LEDs on, the filter helps the light a little bit, and it doesn't look like individual dots, it looks more of like a solid color. Once all the 3D printed parts were ready to go, I gave the Stasis module a really nice savage weather technique with giving it a little bit of a gold accent. Then I weathered the hell out of the other pieces, making them all worn and torn apart. Moving back over to the main skeletal structure of the rig, I went ahead and slid the first LED strip through the individual slots on the rib pieces. And then on the top of the cap, I put a little square hole to feed that specific LED strip through. I took this time to be able to slit the Stasis module in there as well, which had a side slit and then went out the back of the rig. Once both LED strips were installed, I went ahead and heat gunned the hell out of the lid and then glued it on. And on one of the 3D printed parts, I put a hole through that so the LED strip can feed through that as well.
Okay, let me interrupt this episode real quick. There's been a lot that's happened since the last clip. So I took a break, this is the next day, and I just want to let you know that I have changed the LED strips to this solid blue LED strip. I basically had to rip open this Stasis module, the whole side underneath here, to change this and this. Hence why there's two USBs hanging out of there. Just let you know, I changed that. So instead of the dotted things, we got one giant solid LED light strip, which you'll see in a minute what that looks like. Also, since I did forget to film this, I was just too psyched up to put this piece together. Once I got that all situated, I actually went ahead and glued on this piece. Now you notice this back part is a little different, and that is because we accidentally glued the 3D part backwards. It was going this way and not this way. So I remade it all out of foam, and it just sits about the same height that the other piece did, except this is going to be a little bit stronger, and if I never need to adjust it, I can just replace it again. But this piece is glued on, ready to go. I did add some little strips to kind of cover up some oopsies and some weird stuff in the foam. So if you look underneath here, I made a little slot for the cables to kind of fly out of, and I've also made some support pieces here to help hold this 3D printed piece on. It's not super heavy, that part, but you know, if I stumble over something or if I bonk into someone or a wall, I just want to make sure that this piece is super secure. 3 different points of support, which are these triangle pieces I cut out, this back slab, and then this triangle piece over here as well. But this is a pretty solid piece, and this ain't going nowhere. Anyway, so let's move on to the next thing.
I had a little piece of hose left over from the original setup, so I'm going to reuse that same thing to make the main health bar on the rig. And the way that hose worked, it was able to slide into the top and bottom part of the rig without any sort of gluing. It was basically held there by friction, and then I also fed the LED strip down the middle of it too. I had a little bit of the cotton left over from when I built the cloud lamp, so I think I'm going to use a little bit of this to help fade out the LED inside the rubber tube. So I built a little specialty tool to help feed the cotton through it. It's just a little long needle, and then I put a little bit of foam, glued it on, and then I can be able to help feed it through the hose. Still had a little bit of some scrap left over with these square pieces. Had some old pieces from the old design, rebuilt them, gave it the old savage weathering technique, and now I can put them on the rig. Now for my favorite part, painting. Got a little bit of some espresso brown I'm going to be hand painting the entire module with. I almost wanted to spray paint this thing, but I felt like doing it by hand was better since the plasma cutter came out so well. This is the type of gold I used for some of the pieces. It's a really nice color, and it dries really well too. And it still gives off a nice shiny chrome look to it. Once that was done, took my favorite chrome silver paint and weathered some of the edges to show some of the metal underneath. And after a long process of painting, I'm really far away. Now you get something like this. Okay, this thing turned out absolutely fantastic. I'm leaving it on the table for the outro of this video because it is still a little weird of how I'm setting up the wiring and stuff. But I wanted to keep it lit for you guys as I was explaining the overall finalization of this whole thing. Also, don't worry about the gauntlets. I'm working on something else, so just ignore that. This was quite an interesting and very unique process. The paint technique is the exact same thing throughout the entire outfit. The black splash all over the place with some silver cut off on the edges or just scratches all over the armor. This time I did a little bit more gold. So some gold here, just to kind of contrast this espresso brown. And I did wanted to hand paint this one since the plasma cutter turned out so well. I decided to paint the entire thing other than the 3D printed parts that I had to spray paint. But these brand new LED strips, I like these a lot better than the original ones I used for the helmet, which was these individual ones. See how there's LEDs in between each one? Whereas the new ones, they don't have that. They actually have
just one solid beam of LEDs there. And it's like that to the entire strip. And it's very unique how you can be able to cut these in half, because there's a little divot line. Let's see, I got a sample here I could probably show you guys. If you take a look at these, you see these little silver lines on here. So right where all those copper attachments are, that's where you can cut the LEDs. And it's literally after every inch. And I like that. It was a little bit more fine-tuned to how far I can cut the strip, or at least how long I wanted the strip to be. But it doesn't have an RGB function, and that's great, because I realized when I was swapping these LEDs, I can't get to the sensor like the other ones have. See, these ones have a sensor if you're going to use the RGB function. When these were inside the rig, I could not get to that sensor. So it was covered with the foam. And for $10 you get 6 feet of this stuff, and I'm going to keep the extra roll, so if I do attach some extra switches and power wires or whatever, these will really come in handy for future costumes, because it's just one solid color. You don't have to change the colors, you don't have to worry about the sensor problem. These are the same 5 volt as the original ones that were in this part, which is fantastic. Now, like I said, I have this all rigged up to this little 4-port adapter, which I'm not going to use all 4. If you use all 4, it will definitely cut out the 80,000 megahertz, I believe. Yeah, I think that's an 80,000 megahertz portable battery charger with the USB port on it. And this is great because this if my math is right, the original one I had was 40,000 milliamps. And since each one of these is about 5 amps, or 5 volts, excuse me, I went up to the 80,000 because it was able to power 4 of these LED 5 volt strips. Here's the issue. I tried the 4. It would start flickering like crazy, and it would burn out the battery faster. Now, since these strips are chopped down a little bit more, it doesn't have a lot of energy to keep these going. Does that make sense? So I'll let you guys do the math. Maybe Ray can figure the math out for me on that. But those of you guys who are electrician experts, maybe you can help me figure that out. Maybe I can get a different battery pack to power the entire suit. But I don't know what the logic is on that. However, I know that this system works, and it doesn't drain the battery, and it doesn't get hot, which is nice. So it doesn't burn out the battery super fast. The other thing I was able to figure out is that this little phone pouch, I glued this little piece of Velcro on, and this part can just Velcro onto this. Now, if I want to get inside, since the battery pack's going to be in here, this is a magnetic holder. Magnetic. Wow, yeah, that's a word. Magnetic holder. And then this just magnets closed, and then I can get to the USB port via this little hole here. So then I can have a buddy of mine undo the batteries so we could save some energy. I am happy how this turned out, and we can finally move on to the strapping system on this outfit, because I already got the undersuit over here. I'm going to start tracking on that. But if you enjoyed this part, be sure to give this video fat dead space like. Let me know if you do want me to put some Easter eggs in here. I did see a comment about an Arduino system, so I can have these LEDs function as like, oh, you're on low health, boop, it turns red down here, and then it just whoop, refills itself. I might do that in the future. That's a pretty cool idea. But for now, we'll keep it at full health, full stasis, and we're not going to die today. Unless I get attacked by a necromorph, that's different. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of the week, and I will see you goons in the next part.